Hello and welcome! It is Vintage Super League time once again. I'm Randy Bueller. I'm joined by Rich Shea, and we are very excited to get Season 9 started tonight.
What ho! Gosh, I can't believe we're already on Season 9 of the Vintage Super League.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I believe it's our 9th season, and I'm really excited to be coming back to this.
Only 9 seasons for you and me. We're the only two who've been in every single season. Wow. Steve came close, but we did relegation for a while. He missed one season when we were doing relegation. And then Bob is still with us from the beginning, but he skipped a couple seasons in between. We are the true veterans.
That's absolutely true, Randy. I really liked how Athena always just puts together such good videos, and I love the fact that Bob had Bob, the card that is named after him, and Brassman had Brassman named after.
Of course, she's great. I feel like we're just privileged to be able to work with her. She does a spectacular job with the show. She had it muted on our stream. I actually unmuted my stream so I could listen to the music while watching the intro while we were getting ready to come on.
That's clever. How is the music?
Anyway, Season 9 kicks off tonight. Glad you guys are with us. I'm sure some of you guys have been with us since Season 1, right? Sound off in the chat if you've been watching all 9 seasons. This season, we are back to individual format. It's the biggest season we've had with 16 individuals. 16 players. Everybody is going to play 6 times. And then if you go 4-2 or better, you make the playoffs. Very straightforward. I don't know exactly what the playoff format is going to be yet. That is going to depend on exactly how many players get there. 5-1 gets you a bye to the semifinals. 6-0, if you can pull it off during the regular season, gets you all the way through to the finals. What exactly that means is going to be a function of how many people actually get there. Pretty straightforward format. I think this should work well for the season, don't you think?
I think so. So it's 2 nights a week of staying up way too late. I was grousing a little bit in the chat, and Andreas reminded me that he's at 2-something in the morning, and here I am complaining that it's
about 9.
I know.
Awesome. Yeah, you only have to do 2 regular season shows, though, and the way it works for each show is that there'll be 4 of the 16 players, and they'll just play a round robin. So everybody plays everybody else. That works out to be 3 matches apiece. That works out to be a 6-match night. So perfect size for your Tuesday evening entertainment, and then we'll sort the playoffs out a couple of months from now.
That makes sense.
Now, I do also want to shout out Cool Stuff Incorporated. You see them on the screen. They are, once again, our sponsor, and they actually put a discount code together. If you need, cards, board games, any of the kinds of stuff that they sell, VSL5 will get you 5% off. It'll also tell them that you heard about them on our show, so kind of helps us, makes us look important as well.
So win-win.
Win-win all the way around. The one other cool thing going on this season that's new is Hipsters of the Coast is doing coverage of the Vintage Super League. So that's actually the place that you can go see deck lists every week. ! Deck lists will get you the link over to their website. They did a preview article on us. They seem like they're just interested in covering esports in general. I know that's becoming a bigger thing for Magic, and we've been here for a couple of years doing the Super League thing. We're esports, right?
I think so, absolutely, yeah. Although I define a sport as a thing I can't do. So if I can do it, it's probably not really a sport.
I'm probably supposed to trash talk your vintage game at this point, but I can't bring myself to do it. Too excited about the first week.
We're not even playing this week, Randy.
I know.
I'm playing.
You're playing. Yeah, the first match is going to be Andreas Peterson against Cyrus Corman Gill. Now, I'm sure you've taken a look at the deck lists and started to dive into how this is going to play out. What is the storyline tonight that we should all be keeping our eyes on?
So, Mr. Peterson has brought a deck that I won't call anything other than Sylvan Mentor.
It's got Mana Gorger Hydra. You can't call it Sylvan Mentor. You can call it Sylvan Hydra if you want to.
Does it have Sylvan Library?
It does.
Does it have Monastery Mentor?
It does.
Does it have the maximum allowed number of Monastery Mentor?
Does not have the maximum allowed number of Sylvan Libraries.
No, but it has the maximum number of Mentors, not the maximum number of Hydras. So I think it's Sylvan Mentor. Sylvan Mentor is a deck developed by Brian Kelly, and the idea behind the deck is that it goes just a little bit bigger than the traditional Xerox deck. So it's still Xerox,
Yeah.
but it's Xerox with some capital letters. And the idea is
Xerox being the name that might finally be starting to get traction for the sort of cantrip fueled blue control decks in Vintage.
exactly. The idea behind Xerox decks is that you cut some of your mana and replace them with cantrips.
Yeah.
And so if you're a modern player, if you're familiar with Jund and you're familiar with the Jund Death Shadow decks, then the Death Shadow deck is a Xeroxified version of the traditional Jund deck.
Don't lose them yet, Rich. It's just week one. Some of these guys are like, what's Vintage? What's a restricted list?
There are some people who play Modern and not Vintage, so I'm trying to help them understand some of the theory behind this.
Got it. Yeah, so, but your basic theory is that Andreas is Xerox, but a little bit bigger.
Exactly. So he's still lots of cantrips, lots of counters, lots of card draw, lots of permission.
But Mana Gorger Hydras, Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Right. So now Bob, on the other hand, is on a traditional, great, but traditional Xerox list, very low to the ground, low mana investment for the cards. And so traditionally, the Sylvan Mentor style decks are really designed to prey upon the traditional Xerox list.
Got it. Now, we'll see Bob later, and we will see that matchup later. I do think the story with both of these blue decks, though, both Bob and Andreas, they're packing tons of artifact removal. The Vintage metagame right now is kind of, there's the Xerox decks, the sort of blue cantrip field controlled decks. There's shops decks. Workshops are every bit as good as they have been. And then Paradoxical Outcome tends to be the other deck that people think of as the big three. Well, main deck Ancient Grudge, or in Andreas's case, main deck Dissenter's Deliverance.
I love that card. You know that I prefer the old Magic art, but Dissenter's Deliverance is one of the pieces of new art that I think is actually just really good.
It's awesome. But you know what? There are no workshops tonight. There are no PO decks either. What are these guys are showing up with a bunch of artifact removal? And then, Cyrus said, I've got Dark Rituals. And you said, I'm on Dredge. What went into the Dredge decision, Rich Shea?
Oh, man. So, why am I on Dredge tonight? Because I legitimately think that the Dredge deck that I've brought tonight is just broken. I think that I've had an 80% win record with this on Moto across around a dozen leagues.
Okay.
I played a little bit differently if it weren't for the VSL. I sort of attuned it a little bit more. If I were going to play this in the general league, I would main deck the ley lines, but I didn't think, especially after Aaron got taken out of rotation, I didn't think anyone was going to be on Dredge, so I moved the ley lines and shipped those out to the sideboard. And I just actually think this deck's really strong and really broken.
And the Dredge variant in particular is Pitch Dredge, right? You have no lands in the main deck other than the Bazaars. You have a ton of permission, right? You've got Missteps and Force of Wills and Unmasks, right? Half of the Dredge fuel is blue anyway, so your Force of Wills are turned on all the time. Yeah. Unmasks, so it is a little bit different than the Dredge decks we saw last VSL.
It is. I didn't come up with this brilliant idea. I saw someone. I was thinking, after a workshop deck with no Dredge hate at all won a Power 9 challenge, I thought, I bet the metagame would be pretty soft to Dredge right now. And I started looking at recent Dredge lists. And I saw that someone had the clever idea of just taking the mana base and shoving it in the sideboard. And if you do that, you lose blood gas. But let's be serious. You can't have a vampire spirit, right? That doesn't make sense. I mean, a vampire doesn't have a soul. A spirit is a soul without a body. A vampire spirit is called a human. So we end up with the nonsensical creature removed, and instead we get all of this ridiculously powerful hate that just sort of flows into the deck. And the Emperor would be happy about this. This is just incredibly hateful, incredibly powerful, and really, you also get Hollow One, and Hollow One is, well, Brian Kelly described him as Mox Dirkwood Boars, and I think that's the most apt description.
Mox Dirkwood Boars. I like it. We will see you in your Dredge deck in the next match. Second match is you taking on Bob Maher. First up, though, give me a scouting report on what you're going to call Sylvan Mentor, what Andreas calls Bantwagon, up against the Dark Petition Storm deck that Cyrus Corman Gill, VSL newcomer, has more or less ported in because it's his favorite legacy deck.
I'm gonna give this prediction to Cyrus. I had never met Cyrus before Eternal Weekend, but I met him there. We played in Vintage. We had a really fantastic match, and he came on my stream. We were gonna walk through a Legacy League with Storm because it's a really cool deck, but also a really challenging deck.
Oh yeah.
There were some technical issues, and that technically Moto wasn't working that day. But
okay.
I think we're going to do that again sometime. And the fact is that while he's a newcomer to Vintage, relatively, he's very good at the Storm deck. And all of those pieces that Sylvan Mentor gains in the mirror match, it sort of loses when it's facing the really fast, really broken decks. You haven't seen a lot of Sylvan Mentor lately, and I think that's because the combo decks, I'm talking about Paradoxical Outcome here, but this will apply to the ritual decks, have gotten so powerful that you can't afford the luxury of a Mana Gorge, a Hydra, or a Sylvan Library.
I'm a little nervous about Cyrus being forced to deal with all of those mental missteps, though. I mean, Andreas has got the full 4 mental missteps. He's got a couple of Flusterstorms. He's got a couple Spell Pierces. That can be tough for Dark Rituals to slog through.
It can be. It absolutely can be. I think mental misstep is, well, I know you mentioned hipstersofthecoast.com putting out coverage, and part of the coverage was an interview with me. And I really talked about some changes that I think need to be made in Vintage, not the least of which is restricting 7 cards. And
so you start by restricting 7 cards. Okay. I like that as the intro. I think this is going to be an interesting match. I think like the individual games may turn out to be blowouts, but I don't think the matchup is a blowout in either direction. I just think it's very draw dependent, and it's essentially, can Cyrus navigate through the permission spells that Andreas is going to put in front of him? Now, obviously, his plan A is drop a defense grid, and then he doesn't have to worry about it. That's plan A. And I mean, we'll see what happens. By the way, if you guys don't know Cyrus Corman Gill, he was the closest to pulling a double at Eternal Weekend, the North American Eternal Weekend this year. He did make the top 8 of Legacy, and he, in fact, got all the way to the finals, and I think he thinks he punted. He had a very close sort of judgment call that I think I saw him afterwards saying he wished he'd played the other way, maybe could have won the Legacy Champs, got second. And then he had an undefeated run for quite a while in Vintage as well. He got to, 5-0, 6-0?
Yeah.
May have even been 7-0. I think it was 10 rounds of Swiss. And I think he might have been 7-0, but failed to top 8 from there.
We met in a pretty late round.
Yeah, I think he was 7-0 and then just lost 2 of the last 3. So quite a player. And, I know at Eternal Weekend, a lot of people were cheering for him as well. He's got a podcast, Top Down Legacy, where I know a lot of people know him from that podcast, and he does some streaming. So, we thought we'd give him a shot. See, gotta get some more Dark Rituals in the Vintage Super League. I love it. I love a good Dark Ritual deck.
Absolutely, I agree. I think we have 4 different decks tonight. I think this is going to be cool.
Yeah, 4 different decks with no Shops deck and no Paradoxical Outcome too.
That's true.
All right, sounds like our players are ready. Enough talking about it. Let's go watch some Vintage Super League.